Hi, and welcome back to another Stampin' on Friday episode. Today I'm just going to make a little card for Ethan to give to him when he heads out for his first day of school, which is next week. So I'm just going to make a 3.5 by 3.5 inch card. I have a piece of craft cardstock that is cut at 3.5 by 7, and I'm just going to go ahead and score this on 3.5 mark right here. I'll just go ahead and crease my fold there. And I'm going to go ahead first and ink this up with some antique linen distress ink. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And I'm using this little foam applicator right here. And I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of go right around the outsides of my card here. And then I'm also going to take my white gel pen and just do kind of a rough outline. It's not going to be perfect around my, kind of like frame out my card here. And I do not want it to be perfect. Okay, so let me just put the lid back on this. I'm going to set this aside to dry, for the white ink to dry a little bit, and then I'm going to go back and do a little bit more antique linen on there. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be using this paper tray ink. It's Taggart's number 6, and I'm going to be using a couple of the stamps from this. And for this I'm going to need my Distress Ink Fired Brick. And I'm just going to go ahead and use this stamp first. And because I don't really want this to be a real crisp image, I want it to be kind of like a really distressed looking, more distressed looking than the ink would do. So I'm just going to take out my baby wipes. And my baby wipes are what I use to clean my stamps when I'm done stamping. And these are the alcohol free. And I just leave them. I just have one of these little travel cases that I got at I think it was Big Lots or something like that, and my wipes are also from Big Lots. They're only $1. And I'm just going to go ahead and ink up my stamped image here. And then I'm going to tap it just once inside my baby wipes and then onto my card, because I want it to be really, really distressed looking. And this ink pad is really, really wet. So I don't have a punch that would fit this. And let me just go ahead and clean this before I forget. So what I'm going to do is just take my scissors and cut out my circle. Okay, so I cut out my circle, and again, I just kind of did a really rough circle. I didn't want it to be perfect. I really want this to be kind of really distressed looking. So the next thing I'm going to do is use this little like notebook paper circle. And for this, I'm going to stamp it in the faded jeans. And again, I'm going to do that little stamping off first. So I'm going to stamp it once in here, and then I'll stamp it onto my cardstock. And then for this, I do have a punch that I can use. It's just a 1.5 inch circle punch. So I'll just go ahead and punch this out. And then I'm going to stamp the back to school sentiment, also from the same stamp set, in the fired brick. And this one I'm going to go straight from the pad onto my image. So back to school. And then I'm going to take the little apple that's also in the set, do the fired brick again, and this one I'm going to again stamp into my baby wipes, and then just stamp the apple right on the top. So it's really kind of very distressed looking. Okay, so now that I did that, that's all my stamping I'm going to do for now. And what I'm going to do now is use, again, the antique linen and distress or ink up these edges of these two pieces here. So let me just grab my scrap paper. And for this one, I'm just going to go right along the edges here with the antique linen. And then this one, I'm just going to kind of go right around the edges. So there we go. That's my punch piece there. And now I'm going to go ahead and go back over my card base that I have did the stitch or the outline on, and I'm just going over this again with the antique linen just to dull that white a little bit more, because I really don't want it to be a very stark white. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is just take this piece of like notebook ruled paper that I got from an October Afternoon paper pad. It's the Schoolhouse collection, and I'm going to go ahead and cut this down to about let's see, I think I'll go 2.5 inches, and I'm going to use the side that has the red rule on it by 3 inches. And then I'm going to take this notebook edge punch and just punch that out. Okay. So now what I'm going to do with this is just wrinkle it up. Make sure it's got a nice wrinkle to it. Bring in my scrap paper one more time. And I'm going to ink the edges and also all of the creases I just made with my antique linen. So I think I'm also going to kind of tear along the side here and maybe make that a little smaller and then ink this up as well. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and start putting my card together, and I'm going to get a little piece of ribbon. And this is the piece I have right here, and all I'm going to do is staple that using my Tim Holtz tiny attacher right to my circle that I did in the fired brick and then the back to school. So let me just get my tiny attacher. And we're just going to staple that right onto here. And actually I'm using no adhesive for this card because I'm going to go ahead and staple this on. And then I'm going to attach my back to school using my tiny attacher again. So that's my card for today. Thanks for watching another episode, and I'll see you next time.